I have a problem with my petticoats. For day-to-day, I mainly wear circle skirts and I just cannot find a good petticoat for circle skirts. The petticoat I normally wear is more 1940s style. It's very slim and it's fine and practical, but it just doesn't offer the right support for a circle skirt. On the other hand, I also have this 1950s petticoat, which is meant to be for circle skirts, but I just absolutely hate it. It's just very polyestery, always very static. The cat loves it, but I just don't like wearing it. I also feel like it's a little bit too short and a little bit too big, so often when I wear a circle skirt, the shape of it ends up looking a little bit like a circus tent. So not really what I'm going for. So the goal for this video is going to be to make the perfect petticoat for a circle skirt from cotton and in such a way that it almost looks like Edwardian undergarments, because I feel like Edwardian petticoats just look so stunning, but they're often so detailed that it almost feels like they're too good to be worn underneath a skirt. Like I'd be afraid of damaging it. So I wanted to still be very practical, but still bring me joy when I put it on. For this, I got myself 3 meters of cotton poplin. So this fabric feels very crisp and thin and soft, but still very sturdy, if that makes sense. My previous petticoat I made from a sturdier cotton, so it sits very heavy and it's not very flowy, which I hope this will be redeeming. But this being cotton poplin, it doesn't have tons of body to it. So it just kind of drops down. So we'll have to do something to make sure we still get the support we need. I also got some lace for this because I wanted to look very whimsical and Edwardian as well. So I got this lace that has these little holes to insert a ribbon, looking like this. And for the ribbon, I got a green one, big surprise. I just love having a bit of a contrast to my petticoats. So for this, I don't have a pattern. So we're going to be mainly working just with rectangles. So my plan is that I'm going to use one width of the fabric for the front of the petticoat and one width of the fabric for the back. Then around knee length, it's going to go into its first ruffle. So the ruffle is not going to be overly ruffled, if that makes sense. Kind of planning to use 3 lengths for the total of the ruffle. But then that ruffle is going to go into another ruffle. And then we're going to add some pin tags into the fabric as well to add additional body. As for the pin tags, I usually go for a size of 2 centimeters for a pin tag. So that means the entire pin tag takes about 4 centimeters. So that needs to be added to the length that I desire it to be. Let's get out the measuring tape. So the total length of the skirt I'm currently wearing is about 30 inches. So I don't want my petticoat to be any longer than this, because it is shameful to have a petticoat show from underneath your skirt. I definitely need it to be longer than this petticoat currently is, because the petticoat is probably about like 20 centimeters too short. I'm gonna take off this massive petticoat because I don't like it and I have no idea where my knees are. So now I am just wearing my slimmer petticoat, and as you can tell, the skirt is drooping a little bit and looking sad. I probably want maybe like this, about 15 inches. That looks about right. 15 inches is 38 centimeters. So if I want to do a 2 centimeter pin tag, that means I need it to be 42 centimeters long, but then I also need to give a little bit of seam allowance. So let's go for 44, 45-ish, and that's going to be our first panel. So here's what we got now. Got our main panel looking like this. I've cut this out twice. Then we've got our first ruffle, which I've cut out 3 times. And then we've got our final ruffle, which I've cut out 5 times. And then very importantly, because undergarments would not be complete without a corset cover, I've also cut out my current blouse pattern just up to the waist and lowered the neckline a little bit. So that wasn't too difficult. Just in case you're planning to do this at home and you want to know which measurements I'm using, my biggest panel is 45 centimeters. My middle panel is 24 centimeters and the final one is 15. So together that would be just over 80, and the skirt is about 80 centimeters. So then we're also going to do the pin tag, and obviously it still has all of the seam allowance in it as well. So it should be shorter than my skirts, but still long enough to offer support at the bottom of the skirt. So we're going to start working bottom up. That means I'm going to attach all of the smallest panels together, but in such a way that they're still open on one side, gather them and attach them to my medium panels, which I'm also going to sew together and leave open on one side, because I find it really tedious to gather in a circle, whereas gathering on a straight line is more doable. So that's what we're going to start out with. Let's get the sewing machine out and let's do some sewing. So I've attached all of the panels and I've ironed them all so that the seam allowance is open, so that everything is nice and crisp and ready to be gathered. The next step is going to be gathering the smallest panels into the medium panels. This is going to take forever. So let's go. So we have finished the bottom 2 layers of our petticoat. So this is what it looks like, and it is currently very long. It's 3 lengths, which would be 4.5 meters approximately. I think it's about 1.5 meters wide. So the next step is going to be gathering this into this, the same way we've just done it with the bottom layer. And then the final step will be gathering this into the waistband. A lot of gathering today. So everything's attached, which means I can now go on and sew everything together and overlock the seams. And then we're getting into the final stages of the petticoat. I also wanted to show you a cinnamon half moon that I've made because I was really craving cinnamon rolls again, but I thought I'd make them a slightly different shape this time. And I've also changed because I'm really tired. Basically this week was a little bit wild because Archie got sick, so not like very overly worryingly sick, but sick enough that he had to go out every 2 to 3 hours, also through the night. And Jack was working and I'm obviously working from home. So I did the night shifts and never got any longer periods of sleep than 3 hours. But last night he finally managed to sleep through the night from 11 to 7. So got a bit more sleep last night, but it's just been a little bit wild going out with him like 8-9 times a day. So I'm just really tired, but hopefully we're on the mend now and things can go back to normal. But that is the benefit of working from home, I guess, especially in my case where I'm now working on my thesis. So it's like very uncontrolled of when and what I'm actually doing. But as I mentioned in my last video, I'm also applying for jobs and it's not been going very well, honestly. I mean, I obviously knew that I wouldn't just be handed a job just because I have a PhD, but I thought it would be easier. When I finished my master's, I applied for 35 jobs, got 2 interviews, and then the second interview was the one where I got the job and then ended up working as a lab technician for the Uni of Glasgow. And I mainly applied for lab-based roles then, whereas now I mainly apply for writing jobs because I really want to do science communication. I feel like, I mean, you guys know I do a lot of social media and stuff, even though I have been complaining about my PhD for a long time, but I do actually quite enjoy talking about science. It's just that I don't like doing science. So that's the kind of path I've been looking at because I'm obviously qualified to do science. So it kind of makes sense to stay in the area just because I do have a PhD in it. So I've been applying for medical writing jobs and just science communication jobs and also some marketing jobs, just like social media management and stuff like that. Because as you know, I do social media. I work with brands. I manage accounts. I have like years and years and years of work experience in this, whereas I don't have any qualification in marketing. I do have many qualifications in science, but I don't have really work experience. So it's a weird balance between being overqualified in science with no work experience and underqualified in marketing. Yeah, it's been really, really humbling. Again, I didn't think anyone would just hand me a job because I have a PhD, but I thought it would be a little bit less hard. It just seems like I don't even get through to interview stages. You're just applying for jobs and then AI bots are replying back saying, I'm sorry, but we've decided to go along with applicants whose CV is aligned more with this position. I guess people are desperate everywhere, so everyone's applying for everything. I had an interview for a job in Norwich and it actually sounded really cool and the company was really cool and they did really nice science and I would have loved to work with them, but they needed me to be in Norwich from day one, and I'm just kind of like, how about remote working conditions? If I had to move, I'd have to leave my husband, which I really don't want to do, so please don't make me choose between paying my bills and living with my husband. And it basically seems like you need to have at least a degree and 5 to 10 years of working experience for any entry-level job at this point. But yes, I am actually not sure how things are gonna go. I've been applying for jobs since October, and I have like tried to upscale the amount of jobs that I apply for since January. And I can only apply for so many jobs because I often see people on the internet saying you have to apply for like 100 jobs a week, but there are not 100 jobs a week that I can apply for. There's no point in me applying for a job where I'm like a chemistry teacher when I don't have any experience doing chemistry. It's really frustrating. But alas, I've got cinnamon rolls, I've got a comfy dress on, I got a good night's sleep, and in 2 days on Monday I'm going to start applying for more jobs again. And that's just all I can do currently. But I will eat this, and we will sew, and then we will be more cheerful again. So at this point the skirt is fully assembled, but we still don't have it sewn together. So it's still flat, which will make the next step easier. And I want the pin tag to be around about here. So the way I do pin tags is I normally measure how far along I want the pin tag. So let's say if we were saying 6 centimeters, then we would expect the pin tag to just about sit here. I'm going to flip this over. So we've got the right side out. I'm going to start measuring 6 centimeters. And then every now and then I put a pin in to keep the 6 centimeter distance that I want. And now I'll just continue doing this for the entire length of the fabric. So this is all pinned down. So now I'm going to sew along the edge with about 2 centimeter distance to the folded edge. So our petticoat is coming along nicely. I think it already has such a lovely shape. So it's definitely going into the right direction, but it is still very wide and very boring. So now we're going to use the lace with the green ribbon. If I add it to the bottom ruffle, so where the middle ruffle goes into the bottom ruffle, so that is quite some distance in fabric, but it would make the entire section even more stiff, which means we've got more body in the petticoat, and that means we've got our circle skirt being pushed out even more. So I think I'm just going to pin it on, and we'll see what it looks like, and then we'll decide whether it needs to go there or maybe higher up, or what else we could do with it. It is also almost 6 o'clock and I need to start making dinner soon, and I have not even finished the skirt, let alone started the corset cover. What's going on? I have managed to make 2 blouses last week in the same time that I've half finished this petticoat. But in my defense, I also had to take Archie out 4 times today, so that kind of messed up my schedule a little bit. But that means this is now going to be a 2-week project. I actually thought this was going to be such a quick project, but I guess doing all of the ruffles and pin tags and all of that did take quite a bit of time, and I did also make these cinnamon half moon thingies. But oh well. I guess that means I am going to take a break and drink some water, and I will see you on the next sewing day. Good morning. It is a week later and Archie's doing much better, so that means we can finally focus on our sewing again. And it is actually also really early because Jack had to leave for work early today and I got up with him, so it's not even 9 o'clock yet. But that means we can definitely get the undergarments done today. So this is where the petticoat is currently at. So I have pinned all of the lace on it. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this lace to the bottom, and then I will close up the sides. So my plan for that is, because it doesn't really need to be closed up properly, it is an undergarment, so I have kind of overlocked, zigzagged this part of the seam. And I will just fold it under, give it maybe a little bit of a stitch to keep it in place, but actually I'm not too bothered about it. Just so it sits like this, and then from the inside it will sit like that, but you won't really see it. Just maybe secure it up at the waistband, put a buttonhole in one side, a button on the other side, and then close up the bottom of the side seam here. And of course, as soon as I turn the camera on, there's a cat who wants to be on the camera. Hello. The petticoat is almost finished, but it is a tad too long, which is fine because that means we can make another pin tuck and then it's going to be good to go. So one more pin tuck we do. So the petticoat is finished, which means we can now pick up on the corset cover. Really, this shouldn't take too long, famous last words. I just have a back piece and then two front pieces that look like this, which will be assembled, and I will finish the neckline with the leftover lace that I have, the one right here, just so it ties in with the skirt. And then we'll do a little bit of fitting around the waist and some finishing off of the armhole. And then that's gonna be us. So let's assemble the corset cover, try it on and see what we think. So I'm just trying on the corset cover, and excuse the bangs. I was just out with Archie and it was raining. I'm realizing I put this a little bit too high. I think I was planning to try on the corset cover before I attached this to then alter the neckline a little bit, which I forgot to do. So now I've got a really high neckline to it, which is fine. I don't actually mind, because I mainly wanted to have this to wear underneath my handmade knits, because as you know, I've been learning how to knit and I have actually finished my first jumper. So I'd like something to wear over my corset so the sticky out things of the busk don't go through and damage the knitting. And also in this case, I want something that actually rises into my armhole, because obviously the goal of wearing something like this is that if I sweat, I was to sweat into the undergarments rather than into my 100% wool jumper that can't really be washed that easily. So this will do the job. And like I said, the neckline is quite high, but then also I might wear it underneath a jumper and then don't have to wear a blouse or something and still have something poking out that looks like an underlayer. So it might actually be quite nice. I now just have to finish off the armholes and put on buttons, and then we're actually completely done. Only took us 2 weeks to get here. So what I'm planning to do with this is I could use a bias binding, but that would make it really stiff. Ideally, I could have just used a little bit of the actual fabric to bind it off, but I don't have anything left. So I am going to, what am I going to? I'm going to overlock this edge and then fold it under just once, very carefully. But I also have to like clip it so that it is a bit bigger and fits in. So it's not going to look amazing from the inside, but again, if you mind this, what are you doing looking at my undergarments from the inside? It will do the job. I did this from my other corset covers and it was fine. It's not pretty from the inside, but then I just need it to be secure and in place. And then if I sweat into it in a few years, it's gonna look horrendous anyways, and I might replace it and make something nicer. Okay, a little bit more sewing. I am done! So I thought I could take a moment just to sit down to remind you guys why we are wearing undergarments under our clothes, because they're very crucial and they're something I do not go out without. But I do sometimes get questions about whether wearing a petticoat is even important or whether you can just skip it. So I thought, so this is not just entertaining, but maybe also educational. I will tell you why you definitely need to wear a petticoat. First of all, you want the swoosh. It's as easy as that. If you wear a skirt without a petticoat, it will just not sit the same way. But also, if you're wearing something that might not be 100% linen or cotton, but have some polyester in it, and you are wearing tights with it that are made from some kind of material that is not natural at all, you will get a lot of static. I've had situations where I've had really static skirts wrapped around my legs looking like they were trousers, to the point where I was embarrassed and I was like, I cannot even go out looking like this. What do I do? So a petticoat that is made from a natural material as a natural barrier between these two layers is what is going to save you here. On the other hand, especially looking back at some of my old pictures that I've taken, just wearing a skirt without a petticoat. And then in Scotland, it's naturally very windy. So the wind is pushing the skirt against the legs and you can just see the shapes of the legs in a way that is not very pleasing. So you're getting the swoosh, the anti-static, and the general kind of like, I guess this falls into the criteria of swoosh as well, but just making sure that it has the right shape and it's not just like a thin layer of fabric that is clinging to your legs, unless that is the kind of skirt you're going for, obviously. On the other hand, I have had petticoats in the past that I have completely worn through. So genuinely, the area around the knees was so thin that you could actually see through it, and eventually the petticoat ripped. So there is a lot of mechanical movement happening under a skirt, especially if you're wearing knit tights as well. And the rubbing is constantly wearing on your skirt. So just having that additional layer of protection just to make sure that your outer layer, which might be a more expensive skirt, does not get used up in the same way, is really important to make sure that your garments will last for a long time. Similarly, if your skirt is quite long, wearing a petticoat will save it a little bit from getting dirty, because you'll have dirt splashing up when you're walking, so the petticoat is kind of there to shield the skirt a little bit, even though it cannot shield the skirt from the outside. But it's just protection and just making sure the silhouette is right and that everything sits right throughout the day. And that is why I always wear a petticoat, because it just doesn't look right without a petticoat. And I don't know, it's just something, even if I just quickly pop out and I wear one of my dresses that do not require a corset, I will wear a petticoat. It just feels wrong without one. I just don't like what a skirt looks like if it just sits directly on my legs. So crucial, do it, wear a petticoat, it will change your life. Which is why it's great that we have made a new set of historically inspired undergarments. So now with the educational part out of the way, we're finally concluding our 2-week sewing adventure, and I'm going to change. And I'm gonna have my hair slightly different because it got rained on and I don't feel that fancy anymore. And we're gonna take a look at what my historically inspired, not quite Edwardian, not quite 1940s, just a general feeling of whimsical nostalgia undergarments are gonna look like on me. Let's get ready for the reveal in 3, 2, 1. And that is us done with our undergarments. So I did actually end up adding a little bit of lace to the shoulders here as well to finish the seam like this, because I thought I usually wear a little bit of a poofy shoulder. So this bit of lace will give a little bit more stability into the poof and make my shoulders a little bit more square. So that was my thinking behind it. I'm generally really happy with how this turned out. I think one thing I might change, or rather if I was to do this again, traditionally these corset covers are quite short, which makes sense because this way, as you can see, the waist is actually not covered. So if I was to put a skirt on here, it could be as tight as possible with no additional bulk added to this bit. But that also means that one of the little hooks from the basque is exposed. And on the other hand, if I was to wear one of my homemade jumpers, which are also cropped and end at the waist, if I was to move, then basically there would be no layer underneath my jumper unless I wore a blouse underneath it, and then otherwise the corset would just kind of show. But also I think generally speaking with the petticoat, one is actually enough. Like you don't have to wash petticoats overly often unless they actually get dirty. On the other hand, these little corset covers probably should wash after every wear or every second, depending on how much you're sweating into them. So it would be beneficial to have something like this at least like 2 or 3 times, just so throughout the week I can rotate them and then wash them on the weekend and wouldn't have to worry about like not having enough. So I think I want to make more corset covers, and in that case I would put the neckline a little bit lower, would probably do the shoulders exactly the same way, but I would make them to be like a proper blouse that go into the waist and then out again, just so this actually fits into the skirt and can be tucked in and then wouldn't kind of like leave anything exposed. But it just depends on what you want. So like for a historical costume, this actually makes sense if you've got a blouse or a dress or anything that just tucks in and doesn't ride up. Because this way, like I said, you can just go tighter on the waist without adding bulk. But I'm really happy we did this because this is something I needed in my wardrobe, and I hope I've also convinced you that petticoats are crucial and that if you're not already wearing any petticoats, you should definitely give it a try. But that brings us to the end of the video. So I've got some plans for my upcoming videos. I would actually like to talk to you guys about my knitting journey because I have finished my first jumper and I've been working on scarves, and I'm actually about to start my second jumper. So I feel like I would love to talk to you guys about my experiences knitting, but also just generally show you my progress. Then I've got some garments coming in that need fitting for some collaborations, and I thought that would be a fun thing to do as well, just to kind of talk about the ways I fit my waistlines for things, because obviously I've got really wide hips and a very small waist, so everything I get that is slightly fitted has to be altered. So that could be something I could show you how I do that. And then I do have another sewing project coming up as well, which is a spring project. So we're talking about kind of like a green that's similar to this. So very excited about that as well. But I think that's going to be a multi-week project, even if Archie doesn't get ill, just because I need a little more time to make everything. So I'll continue posting videos weekly, but just the next sewing video will be a few weeks ahead, just to give me time to finish it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that it's slowly getting a little bit warmer where you are. And I hope that I will see you in my next video. So bye-bye. Tilly, I was actually kind of planning to get up now, but you're being cute, so now I feel bad if I get up. No, you're not being cute. You're chewing my cable. Okay, that is the time for you to go down. Come on.